nice all around. Yeah. Do you have a view? Yeah, I do. Go over there.
I got right there. So if I stand on this corner here, yeah, that's over all the way over there. We're going to go to the left.
This in frame?
No. No. There, got your head right now.
I got you.
So be on either side of the screen relatively like that. That's perfect. That's perfect because you're out of shadow also. Over there you're in shadow.
Okay. That's over here.
Let's see.
No, but I mean, it's still.
While we wait for anyone else, I think
we're probably good.
All right, we're going to get started. If you guys want to, if you folks want to grab a drink and or grab a sandwich and take your seats. It's a bit hard to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I can. In fact, I can see it.
You are picked up on
It's picking. Oh yeah, I can see it in audio level. You can hear the sync back.
Hey, at least it's not freezing.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Absolutely, it's cold outside.
Hello. Hey everyone, how are you doing? Hello. Great. Good. Thank you. So everyone had a chance to get something to drink or something to eat already? All right. Yeah. Good. There's more beverages and food over there. Thanks to Susie Greco at SG2 Recruiting. In case you want some more. If we run out of food, let me know. I can order some pizzas for the intermission, if you will, after the first talk. But let me start off with introductions and just welcoming you. Hey, Fish. We're all here. So, hang on a second. Let me see if I can change the slide real quick. It doesn't quite work. Oh well, we'll freestyle it. Just 1 second.
Check the audio level. I'm picking that PC up.
So close. All right, I'm going to stick with this. So we have 2 parts tonight. We have a talk that will be given by Doug Toppin here on AWS step functions. So that's going to be our first presentation. We'll take a quick break after that talk. There will be time for Q&A right after the talk as well. And then we can take a quick break. And the second part will be open forum, where I have sick notes. I'll try to pass some of these out. And what I'd really love to do is get some of your input and ideas ideas for 2019, what you'd like to see as far as talks, activities, things like that. I've gotten a lot of responses from everybody on different topics like Docker and HashiCorp tools, Terraform, and so there's a couple of topics that seem to come up more often that people want to hear talks on, and that's great. But I'd also love to get your direct input in case you haven't already responded to those meetup questions, or the questions on the meetup page. So that's the second talk. Maybe we'll end a little early tonight. We'll see how that goes. This is the thank you slide. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Otimo for hosting us here tonight. Sam is still here, and Blaine helps set everything up too. So hey, thank you. And then I want to thank Susie and SG2 Recruiting for bringing the sandwiches tonight and the refreshments too. There's water and beer back there. I also thank Cientia Mobile. I work for Cientia Mobile. I run global operations and support over there, and Monty works at Cientia Mobile as well. He's seated here at the table. And it's a great place to work. I really appreciate having the time to do things like this, and that they support me in giving back to the community. So those are my thanks. This is the code of conduct, or more accurately, the link is right there for the code of conduct. We're a very inclusive group. We're welcoming to everybody, and we want to stay that way and be increasingly that way. So if you haven't yet, please read the code of conduct. I can send you the link if you have any questions. I'm really interested in it. We borrow ours from DevOps DC, and we've recently done some updates to it to get ready for an upcoming conference, DevOps Days, Washington DC. So basically treat everyone with respect regardless of who they are, who you are. And please, everyone should feel comfortable introducing themselves to each other, if you don't already. So, welcome. I just wanted to quickly mention some upcoming events that I do know about. There's probably a lot more than are on the slide, but the next DevOps DC meeting, for those who are interested, is listed as February 12th. I haven't yet seen the topics, but I'm sure they'll be out soon. So if anyone's in the Arlington area in February, you might catch that meeting. We want to set up our next meeting for either late February, bless you, or early March. I have one talk lined up, but I'd like to get another speaker. So if anyone here is interested in presenting a talk, or has, if you want to refer someone who you know is a great speaker and would be interested, that's always helpful as well if you're not ready to give your talk yet. So that should be late February, early March. And we had to take a break last year. So, apologies for the short hiatus, but we're back in action now, and it's great to see you all. It's great to have you here tonight. So thanks for coming out. And I'd love your input on whether you want to do this once a month, if that's the right frequency, or if you would like to do this maybe once every other month. Either way is really fine, but I kind of like to keep building this around everyone's preference. One conference, a really big conference for our community that's coming up is DevOps Days DC. There's not a fixed, the location is not set in stone yet. We think it might be in the McLean-Tysons area again. Last year it was in Alexandria at the USPTO, but this year it'll be someplace different. So keep your ears open on social media or the website for when we get the exact date and location out to everyone. How many people have been to that, DevOps Days DC? 2, 3. Okay, quite a bunch. So if anyone hasn't been to it, you can ask the folks who raised their hand whether or not they think it's a good conference. I've been to dozens of conferences here and in New York over the past 15 years, and I'm so impressed with DevOps Days DC. I asked if I could help volunteer for planning this year. Yeah.
And that's usually not the case. It's really a wonderful conference to attend and spend time and learn something, and then buy something yourself. I can talk about it for a couple minutes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Asha. If anyone has, please do talk about it for a couple minutes if you want. And if anyone has any questions, like now or during intermission, if it's okay, please ask Asha about it. Okay, so yeah, send in proposals throughout the year. If you come across one later on, there's always, we take proposals for talks, so just send them on in. And HashiCorp, they let me know that in March there's going to be a hands-on workshop in the DC area. There's also one later in the year in Atlanta on both Terraform and Vault. But yeah, there's a local area workshop that I think a lot of people will be interested in. I don't know how many people use HashiCorp tools here, but imagine it's a lot. I guess that's made by Ansible, now Red Hat, now IBM. Another very popular tool. Which one? Terraform, Vault. I think they have Nomad, Console. They make Vagrant. I mean, I don't know who hasn't used Vagrant. But yeah, so, okay, so actually HashiCorp might also bring a talk to Nova DevOps in early March if you're interested. So I'm working that out, trying to arrange that if you would be interested. And in September they have they have HashiCon, and this year the annual conference for them is in Seattle. In case anyone wants to buy plane tickets to Seattle. Okay, so now I guess it's time for you to talk. I'd love to give a chance after this to Susie Greco if she's here, if she would like to say something. But maybe I can get through these questions first and then hand it over to you. Okay, thanks. So is there anyone who who's hiring? Okay, there's one person and 2 people at least, 3 people. Okay, that's more likely. So do you folks want to sorry about that. Do you want to talk about your position or anything? Would you like to stand up and mention it? What do you have open?
So yeah, we definitely are Unisys. Appreciate it. Yeah, so we Unisys are actually hiring specifically in the microservices and DevOps space. Specifically, a lot of folks that I've seen are a lot more AWS focused. We are actually doing B2B work, so we don't need actually cloud-based, but actually on-prem-based PaaS capabilities.
Okay. And can you say the company name? Is that what
Unisys.
Okay, so Unisys, if you're able to hear Unisys DoD work on premises, speak with Abdul if you have any questions. Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. Or Phil. Thanks. Who's next? Did you say you had a position?
My name is Ian McDonald. I work at Salesforce. We have a large number of people in Seattle and San Francisco and all around the world, but specifically I work out of the permanent office in the security team. So I did ops work, DevOps for a long time, and then kind of swung back into doing security and then doing ops with it. So we're looking for systems engineers who like security or security people who like doing systems engineering.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome company. I don't know if you guys have actually seen a little bit about Salesforce, but they have this 1-1-1 where it's 1% of product, 1% of profit, and 1% of employee time are for non-profit work. So my Friday afternoons are spent at an after-school program while I watch kids build Lego.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Things like Habitat for Humanity. As a team, every one of my team is expected to do 56 hours paid volunteer time off.
Okay, wow. I think that's great. So Ian, thank you. It was nice to meet you, and thanks for telling us about that. Salesforce, security work, DevOps work. Speak with Ian if you have any questions about that. I saw at least one other hand. Oh yeah, please.
Hi guys, my name is Omar Ali. I'm actually from Vibrant Health. This is our director of engineering there. So Vibrant Health, basically, we are a health technology company based right in Fairfax, right across from Fair Oaks Mall. Startup sort of feel. We grew very quickly. We started out with maybe 10 folks about a year and a half ago. We're at close to about 200 now. So we're currently supporting a huge program with the NIH. It's called the All of Us Research Program, and we could potentially become the biggest electronic health record system in the next couple of years or so. So we're working towards that, but we're right now looking to hire senior DevOps engineers and senior automation engineers. So AWS experience, Kubernetes,
Awesome. Thank you very much. Sure. Sam, do you want to go in the?
Hi, my name is Sam Brown. I'm Director of Technology here at Timeouts, office that you're sitting in. So if you want to come in, work the workers. We've got lots of fun work to do. So we do native application delivery, microservices, development, things like that. We do automated release engineering, so things CI/CD pipelines, pipelines. And then also we do all of this generally on Kubernetes and container infrastructure. So we're a certified service provider. So having a bunch of certified Kubernetes administrators like myself. So if you want to come do Kubernetes all day, every day, or do continuous delivery, this is the one place to work.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Okay. Can I hand it over to you now, Susie?
Thank you for providing me a sponsor.
Thank you.
I'm here to represent two companies. One of them is Red Hat. They are looking for automation engineers who are willing to be trained in private leadership or Ansible Tower. So writing systems that they are trained and certified. Individuals who need to have clearances. Another company that I'm supporting is called Cyber, and I put the job description on the table. They are looking for computer-role individuals who are interested in working in the microservices space for both commercial as well as government.
Great. Thank you. Was everyone able to hear that? Hear Susie and Sam? Is it Omar? Yep. Okay. Awesome. The next question on my list is there anyone who's looking for jobs? You can raise your hand here in the front row here. If you want to say something about yourself, you're welcome to. No pressure to.
Yeah, this is my first time here. I'm a senior cloud engineer with College Board.
That's awkward.
So I do server-side development. I'm like trying to get more into DevOps because I'm a CSAA.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Thank you. What was your name again?
Peter.
Peter. Okay. Thanks, Peter.
I'm Matt. I'm a senior DevOps engineer now. 2 years of AWS. I do a lot of chef. Security focused. Under different organizations that work with us. A lot of operations. Very with that for nearly 25 years.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Matt, right? Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
So I just walked in because I drove all the way to Baltimore.
Oh.
At least it's better than another long drive I took was Houston to up here in this region. That was like during April, May area. So a little bit about me, other than I like long drives. Also, I spoke at a conference this last weekend. This is past weekend. I did my first security technical talk, so I'm really happy about that. I came from web development, so.
Which conference is?
This is a small mini conference, big mini conference. But before that, I've talked at React, Rally, JSConf, and some other conferences as well last year. Linux Fest Northwest, and some others. I'm looking for work because my startup isn't doing delivery after the shutdown. So, yeah, so I'm open to learning about other DevOps opportunities that are open, and pretty much I was his first and only hire, so he pretty much dumped me in the deep end and I had to swim, so I'm pretty good at that. And I'm just a couple of CVs, so yeah.
All right, Caroline. Thank you, and good luck. Okay, if you happen to bring your resume on your long drive, please feel free to pass it out to people who are looking for filling positions. Is anyone speaking at a conference or another conference anytime soon? Not that I can see. Okay, is anyone? That's really it. Before we get into talks, is there any event coming up that anyone wants to tell us about, or any? Sorry to keep everyone's way on this side of the room. Is there any talks, events, or anything that's not already on the list that you want to tell everyone else about? We're good for now? Yeah, please.
One event in May, Jiffy Lube Live, the food was playing.
The food.
Yeah.
That's pretty serious. Will they be playing Bob O'Reilly or?
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Well, then maybe I have to go then. I'll see you there. Awesome. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's next week is actually Microsoft's Ignite in DC.
Oh, cool.
Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
And it has more cloudy things than DevOps things.
It's good
And of
to know.
course Microsoft. Where your flavors are. But.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Microsoft Ignite next week, Monday and Tuesday. Edwin.
Where's the AWS partner event in Baltimore?
On which day? Sorry. Thursday. AWS partner event.
All right. So, I think the most attractive people.
Okay.
I did have
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
serious one. New Relic is doing they do a road show. I think it's late February or early March. In Tyson's. We are using New Relic quite a bit, but we're not sure that they're really great at containerized Kubernetes infrastructure yet. So our company's going to go there, but I'm interested to know if anybody else is going. So what do you think about New Relic and Q?
Okay, cool. New Relic event. You had one?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out as much as I can. I want to start a DevOps institute, a certain institute in IT. So I've been trying to go to as many meetups on meetup.com as I've seen it. Now, for some people who's interested, there's an AWS Hub Functions and Lambda and AWS Cloud 9 at AWS's new location on next Tuesday, February 5th.
Cool.
So I know they're talking about also functions.
Awesome. Thanks for telling us about that. And please, if you want to post those events in the channel, you can join the DC Tech Slack. Has anyone tried to join and is still stuck, unable to join? It's a little tricky, but it's self-sign up, self-service, and sometimes you have to go to the URL twice before it lets you in. Anyway, if you want to post it in channel, feel free to do that. We have a Nova DevOps meetup channel, or you can just send it to me directly. And without anything else, without any further ado, I think we should hand it over to Doug. Right.
Okay. Let's see what it looks like. Let's wake it up. Then see what it looks like. So, what I'm doing tonight is different than what I've done previously. Previously, what I've done is squeeze everything into a presentation. The presentation is too long, it's hard to get through it, and so on. Tonight, what I'm doing is different in the sense of this. That is, I've got a repo that has a presentation in it. The README in the repo tells you how to use the CloudFormation templates in there, the makefile instructions, etc. The presentation is also there, but the presentation is primarily my observations on using STEP, which is something I'm a particularly big believer in. I think that there's a lot of opportunities with STEP. I like that aspect of orchestration and so on. So let's go ahead and go into the presentation, and then we'll talk about it some more. So in the repo, there's a badge up at the top that says something like click me or something like that. And it will drop you into this. So what I wanted to do was talk about these things. The kind of things they are, what is STEP? Why would you be interested in using it? What about it is special, basically? Are there any related tools? And I'm not a pro in this area by any means. In fact, I generally like to have presentations be a live wiki. And what I mean by that is somebody that knows something more than I do say something and I'll nod wisely like, oh yes, you're right, type thing. So don't hesitate to chime in when you know something more than I do. Next, where did it help me? And there's a number of places. I've only got a couple of them in here. Some simple syntax of what's involved in STEP, some examples, some lessons learned, simple demo, links at the end type stuff. So those are the kind of things we're going to cover in about 30 minutes thereabouts. Now, what I generally do is I put a definition that comes right from the AWS literature or documentation saying what is STEP, meaning coordinate components of distributed applications. By that, think of a monolithic application. You got one big freaking class, method, whatever it is, does all kinds of stuff inside of it, and then you put it in a container and call it a microservice, something like that, which is not really the case. Instead, with step functions, you can literally have orchestration of a boatload of microservices that do all sorts of things. So we're going to talk more about that in a bit, and I have a simple example that we're going to see, and that's what's in the README and the repo, in fact. Get back here. The main thing is that treat it as orchestration of a number of small things. One of the reasons, one of the benefits of microservices is scaling them individually. Instead of having one big freaking class in a container and you scale it out 100 bazillion times, or have a bunch of Spring apps. You've got some in the front end, not Spring, microservices, Lambda, whatever you want basically, Python, Node, etc. And you can scale any one of those individual tiers individually, which is going to keep your costs down, not waste resources, etc. The key thing about scaling and why microservices are so important is that ability to use elasticity, scale out when you need to and scale back when you don't. And the phrase that I always use is one that Werner said at 2017 reInvent: don't pay for idle. Don't pay for stuff you aren't using. What that means is scale out when you need it, scale back when you know, kill those suckers. So don't waste money, because that money can be used for something else, whether it's labor, bonuses, whatever it is. Do something more with the money than just pay for a static resource that's sitting out there burning up money. Now, why might you use STEP? So, key thing is cost. This comes back to Lambda, it comes back to STEP and everything. Nothing's free. And it sounds free. It's cheap, particularly if you scale back when you don't need it anymore. If you scale up and then let that up sit there for a few days, you're paying money for something you don't necessarily need. The other reason that Lambda and Lambda particularly is valuable is that the idea of doing serverless. For example, I do a fair amount in Fargate. You don't have the labor associated with maintaining instances, rehydrating, bouncing those things, patching those things, do whatever it is you want, etc. So you reduce operations labor. But again, Lambda is not free. STEP isn't free to some degree. It's just very cheap. So you have to architect to take advantage of that, to make sure you are doing the things that will keep it cheap. So I've worked with several people in the past where they'll say something like, all right, AWS bill's getting too high. We need to go to Azure. Like, well, before you do that, let's see why your bill's getting high. You know, are you scaled out? You have too big instances, or you have giant instances with 1% CPU, just a whole range of things. STEP will let you put business logic into an area like this, and Lambda or other things into that area, and use them on a per request basis, pay per request, which means don't waste sizing, basically. So anyway, key thing, why use it? Serverless, for lack of a better term, meaning fire off a step function, go do something else. AWS is taking care of it for you, obviously. Hopefully it doesn't have any bugs in it. Orchestrate Lambda functions and other stuff. I mean, you can do more than just trigger Lambda. In fact, the example we have tonight that we're going to look at is exactly that. Because in my original version of this, I actually had a Lambda function that was used to step by step to trigger an SNS notification. Had it all done and working, and then about a month ago or 2 months ago, AWS said, oh, by the way, we're adding SNS integration to STEP, so STEP can directly trigger notifications. So I was able to get rid of that. Now, here's the other key thing. By default, and I'm not sure if this is configured or not, you can have up to 1 million live STEP executions in progress at any moment. Now, if you're not familiar with STEP, we'll talk about that more later. What did you do that for? I'm back here. There. Yeah, really. So, this is the other thing. A STEP execution can continue for up to a year. That is not a small thing to take advantage of, and I'll tell you why I say that. So I did an e-commerce thing 2 years ago. It was all Spring, big freaking class, and it had to do with an order processing system. It was a pain in the butt to do all these things. Instead, I would desperately, I'd go back and do this thing over again in step, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, but that's a key aspect of it. The idea that you can start a step execution and AWS will let it go on for a year. Now, you're not paying for that step execution. You're only paying for the transitions within it and the resources that it's doing. So simply having a step function alive doesn't cost anything. What it's doing has a cost, potentially. So, this is the other part that's nice. While the step function is live, what it's doing is available to you in terms of where it's at right now, the inputs, the outputs to each of the phases or tasks in between, etc. It is a really interesting concept, and it's hard to get used to this. What that means is you don't necessarily need to use your logging system. You may be able to go and look at something that's happening right now in step and see what's happening, what's going on with it. So it's a very interesting thing. So let's go. This is a blank page. Now, related orchestration tools. There's a difference between automation and orchestration, and I'm not very good at this part of it. Meaning, Red Hat's BPM, Business Process Management or something like that, is an example of an orchestration system. These other guys are orchestration in the sense that they are probably provisioning as opposed to task orchestration. So I chunked them in there just because I couldn't think of any others after BPM, frankly. It was an interesting thing once I started doing this. The key thing about it is the idea that you're orchestrating a bunch of small tasks, those tasks being Lambda functions or other stuff. So where did it help me? It's right here. I had a big freaking shell script at one time that kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When I first started, it was only 5 minutes. Added a bunch of stuff to it. That shell script was doing a lot of CloudFormation stack creations. All of a sudden, I ended up with a shell script that took a long time to run, 35 minutes or so. And if I was ready to bail at the end of the day and I wanted to create an environment, I'd start this thing and then, crap, I got to wait here 30 minutes before I could leave because I need to let that shell script exit. So I solved it or changed it in two ways. One, put it into step and put those individual lambdas in there to invoke CloudFormation creates. The other way that I did it was I cheated. My first phase of that, making this serverless, so I didn't have to sit there and wait for that thing to finish, I put it in code pipeline. I saw somebody's blog post once that said that they were doing something with a shell in code pipeline, and all of a sudden I thought, wow, you can run shells in code pipeline, which means if you have a long-running shell script, put it in a code pipeline, and it runs serverless. So anyway, that was one of the areas that really benefited me. Second, patterns for orchestration, for microservices. I mean, so there's a ton of other ways, but it's just that idea. But that being said, orchestrate responses to CloudWatch events. CloudWatch does something. You could have some complicated function monitoring CloudWatch, looking at events, etc., with a large amount of code, or you might have a step function that fires when that CloudWatch event occurs, and you start deciding what you're going to do inside of it. So there's a lot more to that, but I don't want to run along forever because you can find the documentation. API Gateway can be coupled to step. There's a bunch of other reasons. This is just a few of them. Get back up here. Now, the syntax of step. Step is, the only way I've ever used it, is go into the step designer, use the UI, the designer. It's JSON, basically, and we'll see a little bit of an example of a simple one. The JSON is composed of something that starts it, what you want to do, decisions, and a few other things, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The main thing about it is a basic syntax. There's no fancy far-out IDE behind it. That can be a little bit of a drag sometimes to get a handle on. And in fact, if you're working in the step IDE, it does not reformat your JSON. So this is one suggestion I've had for them is whenever I say stick this in that step JSON, reformat it so I can tell if my JSON's screwed up or not. So it's just a very interesting thing. So keeping going. This link will take you to what the step syntax or contents or language or whatever actually is. It's worthwhile to look at that and see all the things that are in it, but it's also more interesting to go find working examples, frankly, than to read that, because reading that is really dry. If you like to read compiler definitions, this is a perfect area for you because it's somewhat similar to that. It's not fun, but it is useful to know what it says. What can a step do? A step function, or state machine, or whatever you want to call it. There's a number of different states, things that go into that JSON. Each one of these is a discrete thing. One of them is pass. Don't do nothing. Just shoot right through it. Task state. Do something. Fire off a lambda, for example. Choice. What do you want me to do? Step can make a decision. It can look at the output of the previous guy, think about it, make a decision, go filter down somewhere else in your branches. Wait, hang on a bit, and that's the example we're going to see tonight. Succeed, whew, you made it, everything worked. That's the final state in the end. Fail, crap, you blew chunks. So something went bad, hopefully we handled it and weren't caught by surprise. Parallel, hey, let's everybody join and work together. So you can run a number of tasks in parallel. Again, this is where you start having to think about your architecture. How you're going to architect your microservices, your services, to take advantage of these things is different than what you're used to. So it will definitely cause you to have to sit and think for a while, or you should plan your architectures. It's a really good greenfield situation, meaning you can go into this and really come up with something cool and new that hasn't been done at your company or application before. I guarantee it. But there are some aspects of it you have to be familiar with. Once you create a step, you can kick it and start it using the CLI, the console, or even the API. So you could pop into Bodo and fire something off. You could have the CLI do it right from the shell. That's what we're going to see as an example tonight, for example. Or do it in the console, all those things. I mean, in the end, it's all the API. That's really what it comes down to. Example of the CLI. Usual, step functions area, start me in execution. Here's my ARN for it. Go do something. So, and this is actually the example that we'll see tonight in the README. So, as I said earlier, the way I started this some time ago was I did it with a Lambda function triggering an SS notification, and then Amazon added the step to SNS integration, so I was able to ditch that Lambda function. The key thing about it is that they made it easier. So whatever you tend to use in AWS, keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. See what Jeff Barr says. See what Simon Licious says on their blog posts, their podcast. The AWS podcast is a really good one. Stelligent's another good one. You will learn stuff. You'll hear it. And for example, with me, I tend to walk my dogs, listening to them, and these are the only podcasts I like to stop and take notes for. It's the strangest thing that there aren't any other podcasts I listen to, but those are the ones. So in other words, pay attention, because you'll tend to find that AWS or Amazon is adding features that you can take advantage of downstream. And may cause you to go back and change the way you're doing stuff, but I guarantee you'll find stuff every month you didn't know before that you could drop in and make use of right away. So what we're going to do, or what I'm going to show you is, and it's what's in the README and the repo, is a reminder service. So as I said earlier, Step has a state called wait. It doesn't cost you anything to invoke that state. You can say wait, give it a timestamp, a relative time. There are like 3 or 4 different ways you can give it time, and then it'll just sit there and wait for that to go on. The way you pay for Step are transitions. So Step is not free. You get X number of transitions per month for free, and then you start paying 0.0000 or whatever the thing is out there. While you're in a wait state, it doesn't cost you anything. Now, if you are polling that wait state every second, you're saying, wait for a second, do something with Lambda, wait for a second, do something, that's going to run into a bill eventually. Now, why I say that is a really good write-up in the links at the bottom of the README or the presentation, one or the other. A guy wrote on exactly that he thought Step was just going to be this cheap thing, but the way he architected it caused it to get expensive, because he was just accumulating these transitions, these state transitions, and that's where you start running into some costs. So pay attention to how you're architecting, pay attention to your build, your usage metrics, etc. So what we're going to do is, I'm a big believer in CloudFormation. Always use CloudFormation. The reason is this. I'll give you an example. Somebody I worked with some time ago I had to go help out with. They had created an architecture, they had created an environment in AWS, and they needed some help on it. I went in, they gave me 35 pages of screenshots off the admin console saying, here's how you create this with little annotations. I said, no, we're going to go CloudFormation. And it took a few days to begin to get that roughed in. Use CloudFormation. The reason is it's self-documented. Create stack, here's your stack. Delete stack. Get everything in that stack, all the resources it created deleted. Why that's important, you're going to go off again, I can see it. Why that's important, reInvent, 2017. I had a great time, went to some neat workshop one night. 2 or 3 months later, I was looking at my bill, and I saw a charge for a Dynamo table in Dublin. And I thought, what in the world? Went back and looked. There was a workshop I did one night in Vegas that for some reason they used Dublin. I can't think the reason was. Created a bunch of things by hand, and you were supposed to delete them, and I almost deleted all of them. But I left that Dynamo table sitting out there. With CloudFormation, and I know this is not a CloudFormation talk, but with CloudFormation you say, create this thing, delete this thing, and it gets all the things inside there. So use CloudFormation. Prototype at the console if you want. Your next step should be CloudFormation, period. So, got an example of using CloudFormation to create a state machine, create an SNX topic, create a Lambda, create step, volve that to pass. That's a word I made up, volve. I actually don't know what that means. Value to pass the time. What in the world? I don't know what that says, but it says something about do something with a timestamp, so we'll know in a minute. Evolve that. That's what that says, I think. That's it. So, back when I first started this, I used Bodo, trigger SNS to send a message to a topic. That was my first iteration on this. I was able to jump that. Instead, replace it with this. Use SNS to remind me of something. Wait for a timestamp to come up. That timestamp, we reach that time. It bops down to the next thing, task, resource. Actually, that's somewhere in here. It says SNS. It triggers the SNS topic. It sends it for you. That one thing replaced my whole Lambda function and the need of creating that Lambda function. So let's talk a bit more. So timestamp example, some kind of time. Time is a pain in the butt in Python, by the way. I'm not good at it at all. Do it at the CLI, got the AR in the state machine you want to execute, start execution, blah, 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 blah. You can see all this in the presentation. Some of my lessons learned. Know your account limits. This is true whether you're using step or anything else. Know that you are 99% at the edge of your CloudFormation stacks before it's Saturday morning at 2 a.m. and something kicks in automatically and says, ooh, I can't create any more stacks. Monitor your resources. So that doesn't just have to do with step, it has to do with anything, but it's one of the number one things. If you talk to somebody who's got an AWS account, they're running stuff in it, and they don't know how close they are to those limits, they're going to find out early one morning when the pagers go off. Timeouts. This is the other thing to be aware of. It's very useful to know. Don't have any step execution that doesn't have a resource execution, task execution, doesn't have a timeout attached to it. Because your Lambda function might go crazy and run up that bill because you're paying by time. If step says, hey, this thing's going on too long, there's no way this should have lasted 5 seconds or 1 minute or whatever it is. Time that thing out, kill it, continue on. So don't forget, bad things happen, bugs happen, etc. Timeouts will generally keep you out of trouble. Learn to manipulate the JSON. So as I said, the step is defined by JSON, a series of elements inside of it. Get the hang of being able to take the output from one Lambda function, add stuff to it, change stuff to it, remap things in it before it goes to the next function. In other words, you're adding transforms in your state machines rather than you doing it in your code. Step is really good at doing transforms. You just have to get the hang of it. So whenever you have something that works, go in and fiddle with it some. Start doing some transforms just to get a handle on it before you need to do it. Always learn to do something before you need to do it, because when you need to do it, it's too late to learn how to do it. So I'm a big believer in that, and that's an example of it. You can catch errors in branch, actually. You can do catch, try, the equivalent of tries inside state machines. A lot of examples you'll see won't have those kind of things. In fact, the example we're going to see tonight doesn't have that. But when you're getting real in the thing and you're orchestrating a whole bunch of activities, plan for failure. We tried to contact that service and it ain't there. That service blew chunks and didn't respond with something we expected to. Just on and on and on and on. So recognize that you can handle errors in state machines exactly like you do it in code, except it's different. The way you do it is different, but the idea is the same. And take advantage of those things. Make your step functions real. It's almost like having a chaos monkey that goes out every now and then and just blows away one of your states just for the heck of it to see what happens. That's not realistic, but but plan on errors and be prepared for errors, particularly when you're going outside of your step, when one service is talking to another. Now, this is the other part that I find I'm still not very good at. What workflow is best for you when doing step functions? Is that workflow solely working in the designer, which doesn't reform back JSON, and is not necessarily particularly good at telling you errors, but you don't have to do anything but type, save, or start, or whatever to do it? Or is the workflow, have an IDE like Python, for example, or something else, do your JSON inside there, because you get better formatting, potentially error checks, and then copy and paste it into the IDE or into the step designer? Or is it do it all at CLI? You have your JSON at CLI, do your states, everything at CLI. So there's always some mix of things I'm finding that I do. I have a tendency to do it in the designer and then wish I'd done it in an outside editor. So, but it's easier to do it in the step designer, at least for a while, until it gets complicated. You can't fit it all in there, etc. So there's a range of things that says practice your workflow to figure out what workflow works best when you're doing stuff with step. Recognize errors by far and away. Learn to debug by causing problems. Send bad input. Cause a state to return something bad. In other words, see errors before you get errors, because that begins to teach you how to debug the errors, how to debug and troubleshoot. Because debugging and troubleshooting late at night on the weekend for something you've never seen happen before is just a miserable experience. So cause errors to see what they look like and learn how to debug them. The primary thing is, what do errors look like? It's surprising sometimes. Once you start doing this, you can literally be doing microservices. You can literally be having a boatload of little lambdas sitting out there. It will cause you to think about your architecture differently. The flow through your architecture, the scaling, the independent tiers of scaling, etc. All those things are different than what you're probably used to, or what you may already be used to. And I'm positive there are people out there using Step and Lambda way more effectively than I am right now. So chime in if you have any tidbits or comments on these things. But this is one of the things you probably will think differently once you experiment with it for a while. One of the things I like to do every now and then, think of something you've done in the past and then imagine, how would I re-architect that now using what's available now? And I go back to that e-commerce system I did a long time ago. I would desperately like to go back and do that again with Step and Lambda. There are so many reasons for that. This is Lambda related more so than Step. So Lambda is like having a box of Legos. You can have a ton of Legos sitting out there, all different shapes and sizes and colors and so on, and all of a sudden you end up with a box of Lambda functions. You start wondering, didn't I already do this somewhere else, or what does this one do? Do I have this? What does this Lambda function do? I have not yet seen an organization of Lambda like Java classes, for example. Meaning the idea of having a class hierarchy gives you some idea what a class does. Lambda, you got a Lambda function that says call Fred. You got another Lambda function that says message Fred. I mean, so it's very easy when you're doing microservices, and particularly in Step, because that encourages you to do that, to end up with a ton of Lambdas and not really know which one do I need to do. I'll just make a new one. I'll make another new one. Don't we already have this? We have this already, but it's a little different than the last one, etc. So that's been one of my experiences about Lambda work. And as I've done more with Step, it's been exactly that. Think ahead. Plan what you want to do. Think in terms of errors. Think in terms of scaling, elasticity, etc. IAM. Whatever your Lambda wants to do, whatever your Step wants to do, IAM is going to say yes or no. And when it says no, you're pretty much sitting there thinking, we hates it. Me and my precious, we hates it. Because then you try and figure out, why isn't this working? When you're architecting, think about policies and roles, because they matter to your Lambda function. And when you don't do that, what you end up doing is what I do, and that is, oh crap, just let it do everything. Admin, let this Lambda function do whatever you want. So that's not the best approach, but it becomes the approach you take when you don't plan it in advance. I know, I do that. I say it all the time. Don't sleep in Lambda. Let Step wait for you. Let Step wait, make a decision, move on from there. You sleep in Lambda, you're spending money. There's probably no reason to sleep in Lambda. You Step wait, hold, etc. But now I lied here. Step does not. Step does cost based on transitions from one state to the next. So like I said earlier, if you're spinning on wait pull, eventually your step bill is going to be noticeable. That may not be ever a killer, but it's an example of waste. So, or it's an example of a place you can probably do a better job on that. Keep an eye on your metrics. Know what's going on in your step machines. Know what's going on in your lambdas. Be familiar with the metrics. Here's an example. Make an error in the step UI. The designer, there's a problem with your ASL. Review it. Okay, it's like, what was that Kernigan said or Richie said way back when? Any knowledgeable person should be sufficient with a question mark as an error from a function, because you should know what it means. Well, there's an error with your ASL. Okay. So my point is, that's part of the reason why I think sometimes working in an external IDE can be better than working in the designer itself. You may or may not find good examples. I tend to find Amazon does a lot of tutorials in Lambda, not necessarily a lot in Step. And the reason for that, and I asked one of them about that one night, the reason for that is Step is kind of like a level 2 or level 3. Every time they do a workshop or something, they got to start at level 1 and they're never going to make it to level 2 or 3. So that's why you won't necessarily find a lot of examples of the real world of step orchestration out there. You kind of have to learn it on your own. You'll find a few every now and then, but it's something to be aware of. You won't necessarily find a plethora of repos that have, hey, this is how you do this type stuff. Put comments in there to say what it was you're doing, because 3 months later, man, you're going to think, what in the world was I doing? This to me, this is typical software stuff. But when you're doing step JSON, it's not necessarily obvious that you might want to have comments in there until it gets big and complicated. Your step will probably require more steps than, more states than you think it will when you start doing this. When you start doing it, it sounds like, oh, I'm just going to make me a couple little things here, do everything I want. Well, no, I got to check for errors. I got to do this on and on. Your step will get bigger than you expect it to, which is not bad. In fact, it's probably the right way to do it because you're literally doing microservices then. But your step functions will probably be bigger than you expect in the real world. Check invocation arguments. I mean, there's no reason that you can't have step. Check and see, did I get what I expected when I got kicked off? You might not. Somebody might have sent a 3 in rather than an A, for example, or whatever. No good IDE support yet. Nobody yet has a good plug-in for step debugging or step help, basically. Now, I use Cloud9 a lot, a ton, in fact. The only reason I'm using Python right now, in fact, on this is just because I have to use Python work-wise, but I prefer to use Cloud9 because, once again, use a cheap machine, use an AWS resource when you need it, kill it when you don't spend a lot of money on a machine. But, anyway, that's something else. So I just find that that's an area that would be nice to have better IDE integration to help and organize your Lambdas. All right, so I've got some screenshots in here. Got some links here. The presentation's right there. We're going to go look at something in a minute. All right, so any questions or comments on anything I've said so far? Because I'm positive there are folks out there that know more than I do. I have no doubt. And I'm going to go, yes, you're right. I've done that before. 10 years ago when I was doing Lambda. Stuff like that. Okay.
Question, Bill.
Absolutely.
Early on, you said they lived for a year.
Yes. An execution.
After that year, they just
I have never. Yes, I remember 10 years ago that happened to me. No. So what I believe happens is AWS will terminate the state machine. I don't think you got a warning. It just says, "Die, sucker." So that's a good question. I have never done that.
Yeah, so if you build something that's like integral to your infrastructure and then it just goes boom.
Plan on.
You'll notice, I guess.
You'll notice when you get a call from your customer saying, "By the way, did you know your service is offline?" So that's I have never done that. I believe I've read about it, and I think it gets terminated without warning. It's not like it gives you a 2-minute warning or something. It just says, "Bam, the state machine dies," and I'm not sure if it doesn't get the chance to do any kind of cleanup. So that's very interesting. I may have to dummy up a test for that. That's very.
We have to wait a year.
Yeah, you got that's one of the issues on it. So yes, you made a very good question. I will remember that. All right, let's take a look at this. So, as I was saying in the repo, there is a README. This guy right here. So rather than try and put all this in the presentation, I have them be separate. In the presentation, which is experience, etc., there's a repo, which is this guy. But this is what I was saying, by the way. Click this and you get to the presentation using this tool called GitFix, which I particularly like. Now, here's something I bitch about with AWS all the time, and I finally realized I was doing the same thing. Whenever you do a tutorial, say, what's this going to cost? What's it going to create, etc. And this Saturday night, I was fiddling with this thing, and I said, you know, here I am complaining, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. So, I put a thing in here saying, here's what's going to happen. It's going to create these guys right here. It's going to create these guys. There. It's going to create CloudFormation, step, Lambda, SNS topic. No charge for CloudFormation. There's a charge for what it creates. There may be a charge for what it creates, but in and of itself, none. But there are limits on the number of CloudFormation stacks you can have and the size of the templates in them, etc. Be aware of that. Be aware of your account limits, some of which can't be changed. That brings up a good one. There are some throttles that are in AWS that are non-configurable. There are some that you can configure, some that you can't. Don't get caught by surprise by the ones that you can't, such as rate limiting on parameter store accesses, etc. So you can actually get errors back on some of the API calls saying, hey, you're doing too many of this too often. Too bad, you're going to get an error back. So be aware of that. Again, so it's going to create CloudFormation stack, step, Lambda, SNS topic. I have the pricing links right out there. This will probably not cost you anything unless cost is based on per request usage. This implies don't put any of this publicly accessible. In other words, don't have your API gateway be able to have your step executed unprotected. Because the first thing a hacker will do is say, I'm going to loop on that thing. So you'll run your bill up. In any account, have CloudWatch billing events with multiple thresholds in them. I do that in my personal account, we do it in work accounts. In other words, if my personal account tells me in the second week in the month that I'm 3 times my usual bill, I probably forgot to do something, or somebody else is helping me do something that I didn't expect. So,
Surprise, you're on the button.
yes. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Surprise, you're on the button.
Yes, exactly. She said the comment was surprised you're on a botnet. Absolutely. If you put an API out there, a resource public accessible, don't assume that nobody's ever going to find that thing. Because when they find it, they'll exploit it, they'll find something fun to do with it. That fun may be nothing more than give you a bad reputation or run up your bill. And if you're not watching it with thresholds, you might get caught by surprise if it starts on the 2nd of the month and you don't notice it until the 31st of the month.
A lot of them are doing crypto mining now too.
Yes. It is. The comment was crypto mining. If you have exposed keys or exposed resources, there's really good software out there that'll say, I got me something, I'm going to fire me up the largest number of EC2 instances of each type for this region in your account and do me some crypto mining. So it's an interesting thing to observe some of these things. There is quite so. So again, my point on this is I said, I'm going to put something in here about cost. This will probably not cost anything, just don't let it run forever. This does assume that you have a Lambda basic role and step execution role already configured in. I was going to try to get to that as part of this, and I just couldn't get to it. So again, what you're looking at here is a make file. I guess it's probably good to show the repo at the same time. Let's do that. Probably this one. Let's see. So in the repo, you've got the presentation, which is this pitch meeting. Then you've got a remindme.yaml file. That's the step function. In fact, or no, that's the CloudFormation template. You've got a make file. Why there's a make file is this. I only started doing this in the last few months. Previously, I would use a shell script to invoke CloudFormation, which meant I had to do argument handling, I had to do environment handling, et cetera, et cetera. And then a while back, I saw somebody else and they were using make files, and I thought, son of a gun, make files. Argument handling, invocation, errors, etc. It's already in the make the make facility. Use make files if you can, because it'll make things easier to orchestrate. So that's what I have here. So now, if we look at what we're looking at what I was doing. So what I got with that make file is this: make me create the CloudFormation stack to do this thing, do this reminder service. Now, when it creates the SNS topic, it will send you a subscription. It may send it to you if you haven't used it before. You need to confirm that it's a subscription or it won't necessarily do anything. But I just wanted to point that out. Okay, I've got the stacks completed. Run a test. Means send something to the reminder service. Lastly, I'm all done. Delete the CloudFormation stack. Okay? So if we take a look at that makefile, and I particularly am getting more pleased with the idea of using makefiles for exactly this. This is the makefile. Here's the default stack name, which you can override at the invocation of make, which means you don't got to support it in the shell script, which is nice. Here's the template for the CloudFormation stack. It's all within one template. Here's the email for the notification, meaning when the reminder expires, then send somebody some email. That's where this goes. Notice there's no default, so it will fail when it gets all the way through the stack creation without it. Validate. If you're not using CFN lint to validate your CloudFormation templates, you should. CFN lint is exactly like any other linter. It will make you do things better. It will bitch at you if you're using poor practice. So definitely use CFN lint. Now, what this does, if you do make validate, what it does, first it does CloudFormation validate, which I just always do out of habit, and then I use CFN lint. And I explain how to install that if you're not familiar with it. Make create CF, first thing it does, depending on validate. It's going to go do a validate before it does create. If you're not familiar with CloudFormation, here's an example of what it looks like. AWS CloudFormation create stack name, what you want to call this, template body, capabilities, we're going to make us some IAM stuff. Parameters, you're going to pass in the email address, so I don't want to spend too much time explaining this. Now, out of habit, I tend to do a wait for a stack create to complete, because I don't necessarily like doing something that takes 5 minutes for it to finish, because I don't know when it's finished. So I have a habit of doing waits unless I specifically don't want to. So you'll see that in here in our document. I can explain that. When you're all done, delete stack, that stack name. Once again, deletes all them resources. You don't got to worry about it. Run it. This is an example of a test. This is saying, go get my account ID. I didn't have to do that, but I did it as an example of how to do it in there, because I didn't want to have my account ID sitting right here in the repo. It's going to say, go get the ARN for the state function. We're going to execute that state function with this simple old JSON input. A reminder and a timestamp that I want to be reminded of. So that's all there is to this. It is very simple, just like me. Now, test it. This was how I would go in here and say, am I really getting AWS my account ID? That's all this thing is in there right now. So that's my point on this. It's one of the benefits of using make is it makes it easier to do invocation. Now, you can say make, here's an email address, here's the stack name I want to use, create. Once again, it's going to go through the create, it's going to set that environment variable in the make file. That's what I'll get conveyed on the CloudFormation template and onto the stack. You can say make run, make delete, etc., giving it a name that's sitting right here. Maintenance. If you're going to maintain, you're going to fiddle with this thing, always use CFN lint. Easy way to do it. Virtual env, pip install CFN lint, make validate, deactivate. I mean, some aspect of this. The main thing is just be aware this is how you validate your CFN lint. Now let's go take a look-see at stuff that's living. Let's go into step. I showed some screenshots in those pictures, but I'm going to go ahead and show them here. All right. Now, this is what the state machine console looks like. Here's all my step functions that are sitting out there. Some I'm doing something, some not. Running. This guy's live right now. Now, it'd be interesting if it was 364 days old, so I could actually see what happens when it blows away. But I'm going to think about that. How many times this succeeded, how many it failed. So the way I do CloudFormation or resources, in CloudFormation, whenever you create a resource, have that resource name if you can, based on the stack name behind it, so you can have multiple in parallel. That is a big benefit of CloudFormation. Make all your resources off of one root name. So, this guy's got one live right now. Remind me test 3. This is what it looks like when you're looking at that. This is one execution. Each one of these is a UID, or whatever you call it, of an execution that has occurred or is in progress. This one is in progress. It's running right now. Let's go take a look at it. There. This is what the UI looks like. Stop it. That doesn't work anyway. So, the green box states that it passed. This is where you start. Green box means it's gone to this task. It has completed. It's gone on to this. Blue means it's in progress right now. It's await. Here's what I was saying earlier about the benefit of step. Let's pick start. Let's pick convert date. This guy right here. Input to convert date was this little bit of JSON. The output from convert date was reformatted it to be Zulu or whatever it was that I did on it. I had a whole. I plan on evolving this and making it a lot smarter, but eventually. Were there any exceptions? No, it would have been red otherwise. So in other words, you might have a boatload of states in here. You could look at a live function or potentially one that's in the past and see what went in, what came out of each intervening state. That is a big benefit, debug-wise or understanding-wise or whatever. So this guy's running right now. He's going to wait until tomorrow, 9 a.m. Zulu, and say, hey, here you go. Now, at the bottom, this shows each of the states that what went on when it occurred, meaning the execution started on this date. Task state, in other words, he entered the task, exited the task. So that's what each one of these guys down here is, and he's in a wait state right now. So what I said earlier, let's go back to one that's passed. This guy. This one's finished. Notice, all green boxes shot right through. So now there are no decisions in here, no choices, nothing complicated. This is all straightforward. So start from something that works and evolve that rather than start with something complicated and then give up if it can't work. So there's the SNS ID of the invocation. Again, pick one of the states, pick inputs and outputs. Let's go pick somebody that blew up. Let's go look at one of these guys. Look at that, 17 failures. Forget why that was. Failed. Pick that guy. You start thinking, why did this fail? What was wrong with it? I'll go to Splunk. I'll go to Elasticsearch. Whatever it is that you're using for CloudWatch. Whatever it is that you're using. Go into here. Convert date blew up. It failed. Input was this. Output, nothing. The exception, I sent a message in with the wrong key in it for timestamp or something like that. There's the execution history. Execution failed, etc. So that's my main thing on this. And that is really all I wanted to talk about tonight. I know I've already gone longer, way longer than I intended to. But the key thing I wanted to do was this. No, not that. The key thing was this guy. This should be a working example, but there's a bug in it. Now, the bug is this. Let's take a look at the CloudFormation template. Here's the CloudFormation template for this. Pass in a parameter or email address. Create me an SNS topic. Okay. Create me a Lambda function. Here's inline Lambda. Nope, that's one way to do this. Inline Lambda works just fine. What goes in, what comes out, what it's going to do. Comments, oddly enough. The role that's going to execute it. This is what I was saying. You got to have Lambda basic execution and step something execution roles. They should already exist in your account. Here's the actual step function itself. Step resource, make me a state machine. Got inline right here. There. So the bug is this. The notification doesn't make it to you. The subscription does. So when you subscribe to a topic, you'll get a confirmation email. You'll probably get a confirmation email saying, do you agree to get, or if you're getting this, do you agree? Or click on this if you agree, or something like that. I forget what the syntax is. Click on it to agree. It doesn't work. Now, it used to work. When I put the ARN of my notify topic in there already. I tried to create the notify topic, and it's not quite working, and I haven't figured out why yet, and I just could not get to it yesterday, unfortunately. So, output ARN the step function, because I actually use that somewhere in the CloudFormation, or in the makefile, I think. So there, that was the primary thing. So, you should be able to clone this guy, fetch it, whatever, and actually do the thing, and it might work for you. It might not. It probably will not cost anything. The key thing is this. Name it what you want by passing arguments. We'll go with the default name, which is remind you, something like that. Give it an email address, Make it an email that you have SES access to, for example, otherwise it won't send it, or through Sandbox or whatever. Validate your template. In other words, when you try something that works, mess with it, add something to it, use validate to find problems before you have to debug them live at 2 a.m. on Saturday. And this is all that's involved. Makefile and the cloud formation YAML. That is actually it. And then the time converter, this guy right here that I sagely called Lambda function. This just reformats time. It expects time in a particular way. It produces time in the way that step wait expects it. Any other thing, step wait's going to blow up and say, no way, Jake. This, I had a heck of a time messing with time through Python. I finally said, I'll just reformat it and act like I knew what I was doing. So that is actually my whole presentation. So, any comments or questions or observations for those of you that know way more than I do? Yep.
For the, if it goes on for a year, it's going to throw an exception, and it's going to notify Timeouts. It's going to be a Timeout exception.
So yeah, that I would expect. I wasn't sure what would actually, I guess what actually happens is just stops the execution. It's not like it's going to delete anything, so they just stop the execution. So yeah, good point. That'd be an interesting test to try, just for the fun of it. If you got nothing better to do with your life, then that'd be an interesting test to try. So you know what happens in the real world.
Exactly.
You might also have monitors in to note the life of your steps that are in progress. That's actually another interesting one. So I've never had a state machine that's had to go for more than a few months. But it might be a good idea to have a monitor in that checks to see, are any of my states getting close to a year? When were the execution started? Add 365 or whatever it is. Are we close to that date? Let somebody know that you've got a hung process or something. And something's about to go bad for you. Good point, yep. All right, anything else? Any other comments or questions? Has anybody used STEP for real? I mean, well, obviously, I'm positive some of you use it for real. Use it in a large way, yeah.
I haven't used it, but AWS recently put something on YouTube about mass VPC creation using STEP functions.
Yes.
That would be interesting.
It is. So if you do things like I've gotten a habit of, when I go to reInvent, I create an account. That's a sub-account to mine. Billing rolls up to mine. I go to reInvent and I go crazy in that account. And when I'm done, I delete that account. So, in fact, I was actually going to do that tonight, and once again, I just didn't have time to get to it. So, CloudFormation and STEP are really good ways to do that, to do exactly that thing. Provision even super resources at the AWS account. Deprovision them when you're done. If you don't need the account anymore, blow it away. If you're going to do something, if you're going to give a demo, use a I call it sub-accounts. I don't know what the right word is, linked accounts or something. Use that instead of your real account. Don't expose your account ID. Don't take the risk of exposing passwords or keys or whatever. Use a child account and then blow it away when you're done. Use organizations if you're getting serious. I do a lot of stuff in my personal account, and it as a result, I'm much more interested, or I'm pretty careful about what I do. So, sorry, once again, I ran long as usual, but I can't get by my looks anymore, so I've got to actually do stuff. All right.
Thank you, Doug.
That is it. Over here. There, you're not getting away this time. You are on camera, buddy.
Oh, boy. I
Not
tried to
only
hide
that, you're
behind the...
zoomed on camera.
I did not hide behind the laptop as much as I could.
I'll follow you around.
You got me. So, thank you all. Thanks for your time explaining all this stuff, Doug. And the links, you've already put some of them on the meetup page. I know, right?
The stream link is on that, so it should be available immediately.
Okay. And would you also mind putting this link up as well, or maybe I can do it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very
I
much.
will.
Do you all want to take a short break and then come back?